I want you to live an amazing life. And as such, I must remind you of an important fact. It becomes more and more difficult to make friends as time goes on. It is a lot easier to make friends at 20 than it is to make friends at 30, 40, 50, or even 60. And so in this video, I want to remind you of that reality by sharing 8 reasons why it does become more difficult to socialize once you get older. And so let's start with the first one, is that you have less free time. When you're a kid, you come home from school, you do homework for half an hour, and then you're free for the rest of the day. As an adult, that's not exactly the case, because not only do you have your job, but you also have family, house, car, taxes, loan, and all these random different things. But the difference between being a kid and an adult is that when you're a kid, everyone tells you what to do. So they tell, do this homework by tomorrow. Do this homework by next week. As an adult, that's not exactly the case, because you must do what you know or think needs to be done. And because you can't really know what needs to be done, most of the time it's the case that when we complete one thing, that just another to-do pops up here, then another to-do here, then another to-do there. And so it is easy to waste one's entire life just doing, because to-dos must be done, right? You can't know which to-dos actually need to be done or don't. You can get experience at that. But the core fact still remains. If you're an adult, you must actively make time for the things that matter to you, because otherwise life will just get in the way and will fill every single free slot. And so you must free those slots, and it's mentally expensive to do so. This is why many people don't do it. This is why their social lives suffer. The second reality that makes it more difficult to make friends as you get older is that you see your people fewer times. That means in school, you see the same people 5 times a week for 10 years straight. In university, you see them a couple times a week, so the difference is big. But the difference between university and job is massive. Not only is your environment completely different, meaning in university you are mostly around other 20-year-olds. In your job, you're not only around 20-year-olds, but also around 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, so everything is all at once. But you also see them fewer times because you may not be in a team with them. You may work in different departments. You may not see your colleagues much at all because you're constantly traveling, making business. And so you just don't see them. It's just as simple as that. If you don't see your people frequently, it is very difficult to make friends. This is simple arithmetic, you may say. This is just a fact of life. The third reality that makes it more difficult to make friends as time goes on is family events. Family events can be very exhausting, especially socially. Do you think that you will really feel like making new friends after you've been to a wedding you absolutely hated going to? You see, family events are social, but they're not exactly interesting, and so they just drain your social battery. And family events, you typically increase over time. So you have more weddings, more school parties, meaning the children of your sisters and brothers or your friends go to school, and other celebrations, or even later on funerals, more and more of them. There will be a time where the main activity isn't weddings, but funerals. This is unfortunate. But it proves once again, it becomes more difficult because you have these things which not only take up time, but they also drain your social battery, and chances are they will prevent you from finding real friends. You typically don't make friends on a funeral, don't you? I've been to many funerals and I didn't make friends. So maybe some people do make friends on funerals. I don't know. Anyway, the fourth reality that makes it more difficult to make friends as time goes on is geography. In school, you live in the same village. In job, not necessarily. Someone may live in that village, and that village, and that village. Someone may live in the city. Someone may live in a completely other part of the city. But as time goes on, your best friend moves away. Your other friend moves to a completely other country. And your social circle gets thinner and thinner. This is unfortunate, but there's not much you can do there except to get rich so that you can travel all the time. Although actually you can travel quite cheaply. For instance, a ticket to the Canary Islands can go for as low as 25 euros. So even if you aren't very rich, you can of course do something, but travel is time intensive. Most of the time it's expensive, and how are you going to travel if you have your job, your family, and your hot blonde? Those things take time, and those things take time away from socializing and from traveling and from connecting to old friends. The fifth reality that makes it more difficult to find friends when you're older is increased standards. When you're in school, it is plausible that some of your friends are video game wankers. But when you're an adult and you have so many things to do and haven't been a loser for many years, chances are you will not be interested in being friends with video game wankers. The difference between those people and people who've been on self-improvement for 10, 15, 20 or even 30 years is just too massive. And not only are your standards likely to increase because your time gets more scarce, other people's standards are going to increase as well. Imagine not having socialized properly in your teens, 20s and 30s, that you are then awkward at the age of 40. Basically, no 40-year-old is going to tolerate a socially awkward 40-year-old. This is unfortunate, but this is reality. I guess if you try very hard, you can overcome that, but it is just 10 to 100 times more difficult. So do it whilst you're young. The sixth reality that makes it more difficult to make friends when you're older is that people just become too different. We've touched this in the fifth point already. But when you're young, you are still figuring yourself out, meaning your identity is a bit flexible. But once you've lived a certain lifestyle for many years, held certain beliefs for many years, worked the same job for many years, had the same hobbies for many years, your personality becomes stiff and more distinguished. Therefore, it becomes harder to bond with someone new who's also stiff and distinguished in their personality. And once again, this is just a fact of life. There's nothing you can do about this exactly. You could, of course, never develop an identity, but 40-year-olds don't want to be friends with 40-year-olds who don't have an identity, typically. Because in their perspective, the time just isn't worth it. Now, the seventh reality is especially brutal because it also can happen in university, which is that once you stop living with your parents and reality sets in, you'll notice that your job kind of consumes everything. When you have worked for a long time, for 8 hours, for 10 hours, and then also commuted, you don't have energy to do anything else. And because you don't have energy to do anything, it becomes difficult to socialize. And because you don't do anything, because you're exhausted from working, you also don't have much to discuss. So unless you're friends with a fisherman or the barbecue guy, you won't have enough to talk about because you don't feel inspired to talk about anything because you live an uninspiring life. This is unfortunate, but this is a reality that 99% of people face, that their job just exhausts them and thus they don't have time or the energy to socialize, even though they may have free time, even though they may have the capacity to see them every day, even though they may not have many family events, even though they may be geographically close, even though they may not have absurd standards. Just because their work is so exhausting and their lives so dull because of that work, there's often just not enough capacity to make friends. And now the 8th reason blends with the 7th one, which is that your health is going to get worse as you get older. Many people start to report feeling older pretty much starting at 35. And you can't socialize properly in the sense that in the same way that young people would. Young people often go to parties. I personally don't like parties because they say parties are great places to meet hot blondes, but how are you going to meet them when the music is so loud and you can't hear anything? But let's not get distracted. Most young people party. Most old people don't party because partying gets physically too exhausting for older people, and thus they have less things in common and less ways to bond. And so this is the brutal reality. On almost every single layer, it becomes more and more difficult to make friends as time goes on. And so, from this pessimistic perspective, we can say that the best time to make friends is now. You'll never be as young. You'll never have more time. You'll never have fewer responsibilities. You'll never have more resilience. You'll never have more energy. You'll never be closer. You'll never have more time to bond than now. So do something about it. And so, meine Skol, my goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. I hope that this video helped you, reminded you to make a good decision. If you did, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.